Hi, and welcome back to this Tuesday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. I am Brian Fisher. The program is Focal Point, the network. He is the American Family Radio Talk Network. You know, I'm going to come back to this piece by Melanie Phillips in the Daily Mail online because it's a radical expose of how the left subverts the family, undermines the family, revels in the breakdown of the family. And, of course, one of the reasons that they enjoy the breakdown of the family is it gives them the opportunity to argue for expanding government programs. We've got to have more government programs. We have to take more money from taxpayers in order to fund these welfare programs because we have all of this chaos around us. So rather than looking at rebuilding the moral foundations of America and strengthening marriages, raising the guardrails around marriage, raising the bar for marriage, they just argue for more government programs. Now, one organization that has consistently examined the impact of government policies on the family, looked at the consequences of the breakdown of the family, is the Heritage Foundation. They've done absolutely great work at looking at the social impact of government policies, the impact of the breakdown of marriage and the nuclear family in America. And they've done great work just recently tallying the cost of the Marco Rubio amnesty plan. And here to talk with us about that from the Heritage Foundation is Mike Gonzales, who is the Vice President of Communications at Heritage. Mike, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
How are you, Brian? Thank you very much for having me here. The first thing I want to tell you is I was listening to you just now, and I'm sitting on my computer, and I'm Googling Melanie Phillips and family. She's an old friend and a very good writer, and I'm sure I'm dying to read what she's written on this subject, which is so important to all of us.
Well, it's dated actually, looks like updated May 4. So I just came across it this morning, but it's on the Daily Mail online, and I'm telling you, Mike, it's a powerful expose. Her personal experience, hardcore leftist, writing as a hardcore leftist journalist for The Guardian over there, which is about as far left as you can get. Her eyes being open to the importance of fathers and families, the tragic consequences in the lives of children, and a culture when you have fatherless homes, opened her eyes. She began to talk about this and was completely ostracized by the people she thought were her friends on the left, who were just so rabidly committed to narcissism and self-centeredness that it's like they didn't care that children are being chewed up by their policies.
I just found it, and I'm going to read it. She used to write for me when I was at the Wall Street Journal, and this is what you're talking about right now. It's at the base of everything we're discussing right now, the breakup of the family and how the welfare state destroys family, destroys communities, and destroys individuals.
You know, and it's interesting, and Mike, while we're here, let me just look at a couple of, I want to get to the immigration thing, but I didn't realize you had a connect, Phillips. But here's this is interesting to me because she says toward the end of the piece, this is on page 9, this revealed another sad truth about the left. What matters to them above all is that they are seen to be virtuous and compassionate. They simply cannot deal with the possibility that they might not be. They deal with any such suggestion not by facing up to any harm they may be doing, but by shutting down the argument altogether. That's because the banner behind which they march is not altruism, as they kid themselves. It is narcissism.
Sounds fantastic. I'll tell you, I'm writing a book on Hispanics right now, and this is what I'm finding out is that the welfare state that we have built up in this country over the last 4 decades just entraps people in a culture of dependency from which it's very difficult to extricate yourself. And it just, as you say, it keeps adding. So more welfare programs are needed, and more welfare programs are needed, and it's what we have done to ourselves. If it had been a foreign country that had done it to us, we consider it an act of war.
Well, you know, you know, it strikes me too. You know, she talks about them worshiping at the altar of self and all that. They, you know, worship government instead of God. And you know, one of the things, Mike, talking with Mike Gonzales, Vice President of Communications for Heritage Foundation, one of the things that why I'm so passionately against an expanding welfare state, because people are going, well, you're not being compassionate, you're not caring. I just hate what that dependency that you're talking about. I hate what it does to people. I mean, I've seen what it's done to people I care about and love. It creates this sense of learned helplessness where they don't think they can make it on their own, so it completely robs them of self-respect and self-reliance, and it just grieves me to see what it does to the human spirit.
Well, we cannot see that point, Brian, of compassion. We cannot see that point to the side that actually destroys, as you say, self-respect and self-reliance.
Well, let's talk about the immigration bill, because part of you guys there, Robert Rector and other researchers there, have kind of tallied up the cost of the Rubio amnesty bill, and it's not a pretty picture, and a lot of it has to do with what we were just talking about, is this massive increase in kind of welfare distribution, wealth redistribution, and just bringing into the country just millions upon millions, 33 million people by most estimates, who are going to come in with some level of dependency upon taxpayers.
Well, we can't, that's the thing. I mean, we can't ignore that this welfare system exists. And all of a sudden throw 11 million or whatever, however many million it is, into it and say that that's going to make it easier for us to reform our welfare state or to reform the entitlement system. We need to get to those first and reform them. Milton Friedman very well, actually. The open borders and the welfare state are mutually exclusive, and it should take any of your listeners no longer than 5 seconds to figure out why. You cannot have a cradle-to-the-grave welfare state, which is what we have in this country, Brian. But, you know, we delude ourselves into thinking that that's only what the Scandinavians have, or the Belgians, or the French. No, that's what we have. We have a cradle-to-the-grave system, which, as we have just been discussing, creates a lot of dysfunctions. You cannot have that and open borders at the same time, because what you do is then you suck in people who will be thrown into that, and they will become a burden on the taxpayer. And what our study found out is that if we do a 50-year study, and now it's important to know why we do a 50-year study, the average, what our researchers found out is that the average unlawful immigrant is average age of 34. So he or she will have a life expectancy of 84. That's 50 years. And then over that lifetime span, or that lifespan, they will pay in taxes 3.1. This is if we legalize them, right? Mm-hmm. And if we give them access to our very rich welfare benefits. On a set of $6.3 trillion. Now, what the reason why we look at 50 years and the framers of this bill look at 10 years is because they have delayed the period in which these unlawful immigrants who are then legalized would have access to benefits. So for the first 10 years, they're right, the cost is not so high. It is what happens once they have access to these benefits, according to our analysts. And that's how we come up with this figure of $6.3 trillion.
You know, and the computation there, and if you got that in front of you, Mike, this is what stunned me, and I brought this figure to this listening audience yesterday and kind of made it our Fisher factoid of the day. The amount the average adult illegal alien would receive in government benefits over the course of his lifetime than he would pay in taxes. You got that figure off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think I can find that. The average, the head of household, the fiscal deficit per unlawful immigrant household would be, on the full amnesty, $27,976.
And and you guys totaled that up for the lifetime of the average unlawful immigrant, and I noticed you were kind of tastefully circumspect in the executive summary about the term that you used. I just used the term illegal alien. But, your calculations, your research has indicated that, and I'm just quoting from the summary here, if amnesty is enacted, the average adult unlawful immigrant would receive $592,000 more in government benefits over the course of his remaining lifetime than he would pay in taxes. Almost right. $600,000. This is obviously, you're looking at 33 million people. This is not a sustainable policy change?
Well, we think it should be part of the debate, to say the least. I think we need to discuss all aspects of this, and the fiscal cost is obviously in any bill that is being presented to the Congress. We should keep in mind how much it's going to cost the taxpayer.
Mike, let me ask you, we got a couple of minutes left. I want to ask you a couple of more kind of political questions, and feel free to beg off if you don't want to take a stab at these. But, you know, I just can't understand why any conservative Republican would support this. I mean, it's a mystery to me that Marco Rubio would want to have his fingerprints on this. How do you explain that?
Well, you know, our new president, Jim DeMint, former senator from South Carolina, is very good friends with Marco Rubio. He played a role in bringing Senator Rubio into the Senate. They're still good friends. They agree on many things. Senator DeMint knew they were not going to agree on every issue, nor did they expect to agree on every issue. They happen to disagree on this issue profoundly. But I cannot explain it. I think that Senator Rubio wants to be in the same place we are, which is to have a rational immigration system. I think that we can have that rational immigration system without the cost. I mean, we're heritage things, that we can have that rational immigration system without the cost of amnesty. We can rationalize our system. We can secure the borders. We can do a lot of things that the country agrees upon, that there's consensus on, and down the line get to the tougher questions of what to do with 11 million, but not put that first.
Well, and it seems to me, Mike, and I'll give you just 15 seconds for the last word, even if this was a good idea, this legalizing of those that have broken our immigration laws, the reality is we can't afford it.
So right now, what Heritage is saying is we cannot afford it, no.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, listen, I appreciate your time. Mike Gonzales, Vice President of Communications at Heritage Foundation, been our guest here to walk through some of these astonishing numbers from the great research that they have done about the financial impact of the Rubio amnesty bill. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it very much for taking time to be with us.
Thank you. Bye.
Mike Gonzales, Vice President of Communication at the Heritage Foundation. And again, they just do phenomenal work on the impact of the proposed immigration bill on our budget. And we just can't afford it. It's not sustainable. Focal Point AFR Talk, back with your phone calls. Stay with us.